All right, so there's going to be parts of this presentation that I would like to have some feedback on. So if you guys are able to unmute and answer the questions I am asking, that would be great. So I'm not sure if I'm going to really be able to see the chat all that well. So, all right. So, hopefully you are here because you want to learn some ways that you can do better on your exams. And like I said, it's not just math exams, but really any classes in college that especially some of the really hard classes, it's sometimes hard to know, how do I study for these so that I can retain the information and then be able to do well on the exams. And so some of the things I give you here, I hope will help with that. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so when we are trying to figure out how to learn, like the best way to learn, metacognition is really the key to that. And so we're going to talk about, in this time together, we'll be discussing some things about metacognition and how that can help you. All right, so sometimes we have students that maybe struggle with their first or second exam. But then as they apply some of these concepts and these ideas that I'm going to be providing you today, they have been shown to be able to do a lot better on that. So let me see. So here is an example of just that. So these are actual students in different classes, and you can see their grades in black are what they scored before they started using the techniques that I'm going to be giving you today, and the scores in red, and these are all percentages, so out of 100, and the scores in red are after they started using some of these techniques. And notice how, like Travis, for instance, right? He got 47 and then a 52. I'm sure when he got those two exam scores back, he was probably thinking, oh, there's no way I can pass this class, and I probably will just have to, retake it or something. But he implemented these things and scored in the 80s on his last two exams and was able to earn a B in the class. And even on the second one down, Joshua, right, scored a 68 and then a 50. All right, so he didn't, he kind of kept going down and down, but then after he implemented these, it started going up. But look at Christy at the bottom, right? She scored a 60 on the first exam, started implementing these things, and then got 100 on her second exam. Now, chemistry doesn't tend to be something that gets easier as it goes on, so I doubt it was that second exam was a lot easier than the first, right? It's because of these techniques that she was using in there. So how did they do this? Well, they became expert learners by using metacognition. And one of the keys that I want to make sure that you understand is that they studied to learn, not just to make the grade. Does that make sense to you guys, what I mean by that? Sometimes people go into a class and they're like, I just want to get an A in the class. But if you kind of turn it around and say, I want to study to learn the material well, then usually you will get that grade that you want. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. So let's talk a little bit about what is metacognition, because maybe some of you have heard about it, maybe some of you haven't. So metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking. So when you are starting to, think about something, you start to question yourself. Is that right? Is it not? So you're thinking about your own thinking. You're aware of yourself as a problem solver. You monitor, plan, and control your mental processing. So you don't just let things go as they will. You have a plan in place to help you with this. And you can accurately judge your level of learning. I've had students in the past that have said, I said, oh, how did you think you did on the exam? And I've gotten some students, I'm like, oh, I think I did really well. And then after I correct their exam, they're like in the low 70s. And I was like, I wonder, kind of what that disconnect was and how, they thought they did really well on it, but they didn't. And so understanding, like making sure that you're really being true to yourself. Like, do you really understand the material, or do you just kind of understand it? Do you understand it enough to get by? So, and then I love this for sure. You know what you know and what you don't know. That's really key. And so as you're getting ready for an exam, those are some things that you should be thinking about. Okay, which of these concepts do I really know? And then which ones do I not know? Which ones do I need to maybe study a little bit heavier so that I can do better on them? All right, so there is definitely a power to using metacognition. And I'm just going to read this because I thought this was really interesting about the power of metacognition. Metacognition is vital for students to thrive in college, in their careers, and in a lifelong learning. It helps promote autonomy and resiliency. When students improve their metacognitive skills, they are more likely to embrace a growth mindset and learn from mistakes. If we want students to grow into problem solvers and critical thinkers, we need to help them develop metacognition. So this was obviously geared to some college professors and trying to help them understand why students need to understand what metacognition is and how to use it. And it's really interesting to me because when, employers are asked, what are some of the most important skills that you want your employees to have when they, come out of college? And some of these things are exactly what they said. They want them to be great problem solvers, and they need to be able to be critical thinkers. And so doing these things will also help you in the job field as well. Okay, so this is one point where I want to ask you guys something. So just unmute and feel free to chime in. What do you think the purpose of homework is?
To help you get in the rhythm of knowing how to do a problem.
Yeah, I like that.
Get you ready for the test.
Get you ready for the test, like that.
Just do some repetition to help you understand the material.
Yeah.
To learn,
yeah, and to really get it down, right?
To help you apply more of what you're teaching.
Yeah, you apply it to, and you can kind of apply it to other things later on too, right? Some homework will help you with other homework. So I like that you're thinking about applying it. Okay, well, some of the things that I came up with, and you guys said all of these things in different wording, but same ideas. Reinforce the concepts taught in class. Extend the knowledge beyond what was explained in class. So sometimes I have students that say, Becky, there was a problem on the homework and we didn't do an example just like that problem in class. And I say, I know, I wanted you to be able to apply what we learned and see if you could kind of extend yourself a little bit further to be able to take that and apply it. So that goes along with what you were saying about applying it. It also deepens your content knowledge. So as you practice more and more and more, you're going to kind of see some patterns or maybe understand things at a deeper level. and it ensures that you're ready for class activities. And also, like you said, it helps you for exams. It makes me really sad when I see students that do try and do all of their homework, because usually I'll leave the homework open until, like the last day of the exam, until midnight. And then I see students trying to get the homework and stuff done before that, but we've already taken the exam. And so really use that homework as something to help you get ready, and, you're going to do so much better on the exams if you're doing your homework. And I know sometimes, like in high school, sometimes students are like, oh, homework is just to torture me, right? But I promise you it's not, especially in math. Like, a lot of repetition can really help. Okay, so let's talk about some effective homework strategies. Because when I was, going to school and stuff, I don't think I used the best strategies. I didn't know exactly the best ways to study. And I was just doing what I thought was best. And, and I can see now that some of those weren't as effective. So I'm hoping that I can pass some of these things along to you, so you're not just like feeling like, oh, I just feel like it's just so hard in college because I don't know what to do with my homework. So one of the biggest things is I want you to study the material first before looking at the problems or the questions. So by that, I mean, maybe look through your notes before you start doing your homework problems, and just kind of refresh your mind about what was talked about in class or in the videos if you're in an online class, and and really think about, and study those things before you get into the homework. And then make sure you start the homework early. I always get so concerned for students when I see that they're kind of behind on their homework. And because I know how hard it is to get caught back up if you get behind on that really, really far. So it's best to try and do those homework problems on the day they're assigned. So if you're in an in-person class, try and find time that day. It's going to be the notes and the lecture and things we talked about in class are going to be fresh in your mind. Or if you're an online student, the day that you watch the videos and stuff, right after that, try and get the homework done. Okay, now this is one that I used to always do. And I can see now how it wasn't benefiting me as a student. So I don't want you to flip back to see example problems, or try and some homework, have like helps, like watch this video, or different things like that, or like help me solve this problem. And doing things that way, or even just, and a big one right now is AI, right? And so you might not be looking back at your notes, but I've had a lot of students tell me that they use like Photomath to help them do all of their homework problems. And that's going to be a real issue when you get to the exam, because you're not going to have that help, right, to get you through it. And really, when you think about it, like, who's doing the work there, right? Is your brain, thinking about it? Is it retrieving it? Or is the AI, app or whatever you're using the one that's doing that? And so, and I'm not saying don't go back to your notes, right? Because obviously I want you to look at your notes and they're there to help you. But if you get stuck on a problem, try and stick with it for a little while. Don't give up too quickly, because if you're giving up on it and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go to this help, then really, think about how, oh, I'm not going to have that in an exam situation. So try not to give up too quickly on that. And then this is a huge one. If there's, there's going to be hopefully a lot of things, but this is one that, I hope you're writing down, because this is what's helped so many students, especially if you have a lot of test or math anxiety, right? It's hard to take an exam because you've been practicing doing your homework in a different way than you have to take exams, right? With homework, you can look back at notes, you can look at your, videos, you have all these different helps that you can use, but you don't get that on the test. So it's really, really important to try and work some of those homework problems like you're taking a test, right? The only things you'll get on the test is, pencil and paper and your calculator. And so if you are practicing doing some of your homework problems that way, then that's great. You're going to do a lot better on the exams because you get in the rhythm of being able to do that. And it also helps you retrieve that information better. I always think about this because I just think it's so interesting. I don't know about you, but I have lost files on my computer before because I just saved it in a weird place, right? And I was like, I swear I saved it here, but then I didn't. And so I think about our brains as kind of like a computer and how we need to know where to access that information, right? You're studying, you're doing the work, you're, really getting involved. And so that information is in your head, but trying to get that information from your head down on paper, that's where retrieval, trying to retrieve that stuff from your brain is going to be really key. And working your problems like you're taking a test is going to help you so much with that. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, and I already kind of talked about this a little bit above, but don't give up too soon, right? Try solving the problems before you use any of the helps, because that is training your brain to figure out where it's stored in your brain so that you can retrieve it, and that way you'll be able to retrieve it when it's the day of the test. Okay? All right. Any questions so far that you have on what we're talking about? I hope it's making sense to you and ringing true to you.
Yes, thank you.
It makes sense, yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, I've got a question for you guys then, and this is one that I want some feedback on. So what do you think the difference is, if any, between studying and learning?
I think studying sometimes is more like memorizing, while learning is learning how to do something.
Yeah, I know it's hard to put in words, huh?
Yeah, like learning, it's more of understanding the actual material and how can you use it and apply it in other scenarios.
Nice. What else?
With me, it's a little different. I've noticed that when I'm studying something, and for example, if I don't get it and I'm like, going over it and nothing's clicking, once it does click and I'm confident in it, I feel like I am learning. Because if I get something right, I'm like, okay, let's try another problem just like that. Boom, I get it right. It's like I'm learning how to memorize the steps that I'm taking versus studying and kind of running into a wall and trying to find my way around it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe think of it this way. Have you ever studied something and not learned it? Do you get what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Yes, I did that with English.
Good way to put it.
Yeah, I heard somebody say something.
Yeah, I said that I never understood English in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I would memorize it, pass the test, and kind of like hit delete.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came to this country, I had to start from zero to learn it.
Ah, yeah. So it's a little bit like it's different, right? Studying something and learning something. I'm glad you guys can see that. So let me ask you this. I've got some other questions for you here. For which task do you think you would work harder? And, on this one, I want you to put your answers in the chat just because I think it'll be easier to do this. So don't hit enter until I tell everybody to hit enter. So you could type in either A or B when I show you the choices here, but don't hit enter quite right away, just because I want to make sure everybody can kind of think about it for a second and see what their thought is there. Okay, so which task do you think you would work harder? So A, to make an A on the test, or B, to teach the material to the class? So think about that for just a second. Oops, I don't have that all up there. Let me move it over here. Okay, so go ahead and type that in and hit enter. See what you guys are thinking here. Yeah, interesting. Well, there's a lot of B's and there's a few A's on here. So somebody that said B, tell me why you said B.
I feel more responsible to teach us. If I learn it wrong, I would just keep at it until I learn it. But if I'm teaching it wrong, then I will feel bad that others they're learning to do it the wrong way if they're learning it.
Yeah. What else?
And it's harder to teach something that you don't understand.
It's hard to teach something you don't understand. Interesting. Okay. Who else?
I also think teaching, because with teaching, you have to not only learn the concept, but think of everyone else's responses to that, because you only have one way, but what if someone learns completely different than you do?
That's true. That's a good point. Anybody else? Does anybody that said A want to say why they said A? Or
I didn't say A, but I feel like there's a lot of ways to do different problems and different stuff. So if you're just trying to get an A on the test, you can find one singular way that helps you solve a problem. But if you're trying to teach it, then you need to have all the different methods and know why or where someone's going wrong.
Yeah. Do you think you have to maybe understand the material at a deeper level, or maybe kind of know what's coming, like next and stuff to be able to answer some of those questions if you're teaching it? All right. To me, so in my in-person classes, I do a ton of group work because I like to have you guys have that opportunity to teach each other. Because really, if you're saying something out loud and you're trying to teach it to somebody else, you're really going to remember it a lot longer than if you're just studying it and just doing your homework on your own. And I also want to say, making mistakes is actually a good thing in math, as long as you're trying to learn from it, because it's been shown that students that make mistakes actually learn things at a deeper level, because they start asking questions like, oh, I wonder what I did here, or how can I make sure I don't do that again? So it's kind of interesting, where it feels like to me that so many people come into math with this feeling of, I've got to be perfect at it, otherwise I'm not good at it. And, I make mistakes and it's okay, right? It's just a part of learning. And so I hope you guys see that and understand that. And there's an acronym for math, MATH, right? It is mistakes allow thinking to happen, right? And I really believe that. Thinking really occurs when you have made a mistake. So use those mistakes to your advantage is all I'm trying to say to you, okay? So I agree that B is kind of one that I think is, if I had to, I teach class all the time, but if I had to teach something that wasn't math, I would definitely study really hard to make sure that I wasn't trying to, that I knew everything that I needed to know. So But that in turn is going to help you make an A on the exam. So it's kind of like, it's really cool that it can help both ways. All right, let's see. Whoops. Why is this not moving here? Okay, so I've got a little activity for you. And so on the next page, there's going to be some words and phrases. And I'm going to give you 45 seconds. I'm going to set my timer. I'm going to give you 45 seconds, and I want you to count all of the vowels on the next slide, right? So A, E, I, O, and U. Not separately, just how many vowels can you come up with all together on there. Is that clear what I'm asking? Okay, so when I change it to the next slide, right, like I said, I'll give you 45 seconds, and I just want you to count all of the vowels on the next slide. Okay, here we go. All right, time's up. So, how many words or phrases do you remember? Does that seem kind of mean of me? How many words or phrases do you guys think you can remember?
I'm so lost.
So of all of the words and phrases on that last page, right, I asked you to count up the vowels, but then I said, okay, well, how many words or phrases are there? Because you must have, looked at all of them there, right? Because you counted all the vowels, but, does anybody remember any
I
of them?
think one was maybe unlucky.
Okay, we've been unlucky. Some people in the chat are putting football, maybe.
So I kind of cheated. I was like, I had
Valentine's.
this assignment before.
Oh.
Cheater.
Okay, then keep quiet. What did you say? Somebody was trying to say something.
Valentine's
It's a
Day.
cheater.
Valentine's Day, because that just happened recently, so maybe that stood out to some of you guys. Okay. All right.
I'm more shocked that I don't remember anything. And I went through and counted all the vowels and really did not register a word.
Yeah.
That's what I'm more shocked about.
Yeah. And I don't think you're alone in that. So, that's just, something that happens here, because it's easy to get hyper focused on something, right? But if you can see the big picture, or if you can see some patterns that are happening, then you might be able to, remember things a little bit better. So, let's see. So let's look at the words again. And I want you to just kind of think about and share, if you can kind of see this, how are these words arranged? Is there a pattern? Is there something that could help you remember these? Anybody?
In order of numbers.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And have 5.
Dollar bill, 1, right? Dice, 2, tricycle, 3. Okay, so we're going to go back, and I want you guys to do this. I'm going to give you a few minutes to look at it again, or not a few minutes, a few seconds, and see how many you can remember now that you know that pattern, that they're arranged by the number, right? Does that make sense to everybody? $1 bill, 2 dice, 3 tricycle, and so on. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to give you less time. Let's just do like 25 seconds because I bet you can, now that you know the pattern, you could do this a lot faster. Okay, all right, so go ahead and go. Okay, so now how many words or phrases do you think you can name? Anybody think they could do all of them? Anybody going to be brave? We'll help you if you can't get all of them.
I could definitely attempt.
Okay, let's try, Zach. Okay, so what was 1?
Dollar bill,
2?
dice,
3?
and 3. Oh God.
What
I
has
say I
3
think about
wheels?
that 3.
Tricycle.
Tricycle. Okay, 4.
4 is 4-leaf clover.
5.
And
Yeah. 6.
6-pack.
Yep, 6-pack. 7.
7-up,
Yep. 8.
octopus,
9.
cat lives,
Yep. 10.
bowling pins,
It is bowling pins. Yeah, good job. 11.
football team,
Yep. 12.
Unlucky something.
That's 13.
I don't know.
12.
The eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
A
exist.
dozen eggs. Yeah. Okay, but 13 was,
Was unlucky.
and 14.
Valentine's Day.
Yep. And 15.
Quarter hour.
Quarter hour, right? Okay, so like, and I know it's like, trying to, put you on the spot and stuff. Like, it's kind of hard, but you can see that you can, you were able to do this a lot better, right? So we kind of talked a little bit about some of the differences that were there that may have helped you ask, right? Because like the first time, I told you to do something, but that really wasn't the task that I was giving you, right? So understanding what that task was, obviously, is going to help out a lot. And then, but knowing how that information was organized was key into being able to, be able to say those again. And so I want you to think about this. Sometimes students get so hyper-focused like on one concept in math, and they're just like, focusing in on it, but they're not thinking about the bigger picture or how it relates to something else. Because usually if you can make sense of it by relating it to something else or understanding how it corresponds with something else in math, you're going to remember it longer. And so think about this too, knowing all of those words and phrases, right? You could say all those words and phrases. Well, then you could figure out how many vowels were there, but that's not all. You could count how many words there were. You could count how many consonants there were, or, a certain type of letter. Like, so looking at that bigger picture, you're actually able to do more. And so I want you to keep that in mind with math, because it's so easy just to get so focused on something. And sometimes when you're looking at something too close, it's hard to tell what it is. Have you guys ever seen those slides, or I've seen pictures on social media where it's like zoomed in really close to something and it says, what do you think this is? And it's so hard to tell what it is because you're so close, so close to it. And then when they tell you what it is, you're like, oh yeah, I can see that. But, so that's kind of happens in math too. But, if you can back up a little bit and think about how it's going to relate to something else, you're going to remember it a lot longer, and you can do more with it for sure. Okay. So I hope you guys didn't think that was mean of me, but I want to go back to that original question because, sometimes students are like, Well, I counted all of them. I want to know if I'm right. So how many vowels do you think there were?
I counted 51.
Anybody else?
47.
Without the Y's, I got 49.
Okay. And some people are putting it in the chat too. It was 50. It was exactly 50. So it's kind of hard, right? Even trying to get that exact number when you don't remember the words and phrases that are there, because there's no way for you to kind of go back and check, did I get all of them or not? So yeah, but it looks like, you guys were able to come up with that or get something really close to it. So that's awesome. All right. So I want to encourage you to, in math or with any class in college that you're really trying to do well in, turn yourself into an efficient expert learner. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, you're going to ask yourself why and what if questions. In math, oftentimes people ask the question, how? Right? What are the steps? How do I solve this problem? But they're not really thinking about the whys or the what ifs. Why does this happen? What if it was a negative instead of a positive? What if it was, like a different type of number or something? What if, right? So thinking about those two different questions instead of just focusing on the how is really going to help you become a better learner. And so one thing that I want to encourage you to do, and some people are just think I'm so crazy when I say this, but I promise you it helps so much. So when you're struggling with a topic, go and give a mini lecture on that concept. And it doesn't even have to be to a person. Right? It could be to your dog. It could be to your cat. It could be just, a stuffed animal. I don't know. It doesn't matter, because the whole point of it, giving these mini lectures, is you saying things out loud. Your brain thinks about things differently when you're saying it out loud. It actually starts to do this metacognitive thing where it's like, wait a minute, was that right? Did I say that right? Or should it have been this instead? So your brain's already doing that. However, if you're not saying it out loud, it's just kind of swirling around in your brain. Your brain isn't asking yourself those questions. If it's, if you are explaining it correctly or not. So it's that whole idea of being able to say it out loud, talk about it. And again, that's why in my classes, in my in-person classes, I give you guys time to really, explain concepts to each other, because it's going to help you so much if you can say it out loud and verbalize it. Okay. And that kind of goes with the next one, right? Test your understanding by verbalizing or writing the concept, or both, right? Those are going to help you practice this retrieval of information. And so saying things out loud, writing them down, getting more senses involved, you're going to remember it better. Okay. And sometimes, if you're working on a homework problem at home, right, or whatever, talk yourself through it. Talk to yourself out loud. Who cares, right? So, if people think you're crazy because you're talking to yourself, oh well, right? It doesn't matter, because as you're talking yourself through the problem and saying it out loud, you're going to kind of, you can usually figure out where you went wrong. Sometimes when I go around in class, student has their hand up, I come over to help them, and I say, okay, well, explain to me what you did here. And they start explaining it, and they're like, oh, I see the mistake. 3 times 3 isn't 6, it's 9, so, but they, because they're starting to just work through the problem and explain it to me, and then they catch where their mistake is. And so that happens when you do it, whether I'm there or not. Okay. And then I'm going to talk to you about something called Bloom's taxonomy. My online classes I sent you something about Bloom's taxonomy. I don't know if you guys read my announcement or not, but I think it's really helpful to understand how to get yourself into higher order thinking. And Bloom's taxonomy does just that. So this is what Bloom's taxonomy looks like. At the bottom, these are the lower degrees of learning. And as you're going higher, so remembering's the lowest level and creating's the highest level. And so as you're going up kind of this pyramid here, you are, doing some higher order thinking. And so on tests, I usually try and put different types of questions on there to help with this. So yeah, sometimes there's going to be some remembering, like that's the memorizing part, understanding vocabulary or, just being able to memorize multiplication facts or whatever it might be, right? Then a step above that is being able to make meaning out of what's being talked about, right? Can you understand it? And then above that, to take it to an even higher, you're going to try and apply it to something else. So apply it to another problem that doesn't look like the same one we did in class, but you're like, oh, I know this concept, this math concept. Let me see if it works here and try it on that problem, right? Apply those things. Then analyzing is the one above that. So, breaking it up into different parts and just really, picking it apart and, seeing kind of like the workings of what's going on there is what we're doing when we're analyzing something, like kind of some comparing and contrasting in some classes. Right? Evaluating is next. So make judgments, based on criteria and check to see. So evaluating is a lot of checking your answers again, right? Trying to see, did I do this? And then creating is the highest order here, the highest learning order. And so that's just being able to take everything that you've learned and be able to put it into something. And in some classes, like you do some creating with them, right? So I want you to think about something here, right? At what level of Bloom's taxonomy did you have to operate, do you think, to make A's and B's in high school? So I kind of put them here with some numbers. So remembering was the lowest level, then understanding and stuff. So where would you guys say, up to what number for the most part? I'm not saying, some classes might be different, but where do you think you guys were at to be able to make A's and B's in high school? Okay, a lot of people in the chat are putting like 2s and 3s. All right, so definitely there's a lot of memorizing, there's a lot of understanding, right? And then some applying. And then in some classes, you're definitely going to do some of these other things. Maybe if it was like a project-based class, then yeah, you're going to end up creating something, which that's putting it all together to really help make sure that you understand something. And that's oftentimes why projects are done in class, because usually it's there to help you create something from the knowledge that you've been working on. And so kind of keep that in mind when you're doing projects in your classes. But then also think, where do you have to be on this Bloom's taxonomy to be able to make A's or B in college? Can you just stay at 1 and 2? Or do you think you have to get higher up? What do you guys think?
You would have to get higher.
Yeah? Why do you think that, Ashley?
Because you're limiting yourself on what you could learn.
Yeah, right? I mean, if you really want to know this for a job that you're going to be having, especially classes that are your major classes, some of you are like, well, I'm never going to use math again, so I just don't, care about it. But so take math out of it for a minute and just think about your major classes, right? If you want to understand that at a deeper level, then you've got to be higher on this Bloom's taxonomy, memorizing stuff and just being able to explain, tidbits to others isn't going to get you there. Anybody else have any other ideas?
Yeah, you're doing it for a purpose this time around, besides just mandated by the state.
Ah,
By the state,
it's, yeah, it's so true. And a lot of you are like paying for it too, right?
Apply it to the real world,
Yeah.
You're not just doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
School.
Yeah, so hopefully you'll have some college classes that will really help you apply some of these things and, be able to see how it's going to be useful in your career. Anybody else have any ideas? Anything you want to add? All right, so stay high on that Bloom's taxonomy and you'll really do a lot better. Okay, so this is one of the strategies that I want to encourage you guys to do, because this is how you study smarter, not harder. Because I have some students that I know study hard, and they study really long hours, but maybe the way they're studying isn't really helping them to be able to do well on the exams or get the outcome that they want or learn the material to really remember it and understand it. Okay, and so this study cycle is going to help with that. Okay, and by the way, so for the extra credit on this, I am going to ask you, so everybody needs to write this down, because there's going to be one of the questions on the little quiz that you fill out is, what was the secret phrase that Becky gave you? Okay, and that is the study cycle. Okay, so the study cycle, write that down somewhere. That is the mystery phrase that you need to type in on there, and that will help you get these extra credit points for it. Okay, so let's talk about what this study cycle is. So we're going to focus here in the circle first of all. So it's always a good idea to preview the material before going to class, or if you're in an online class, before you start looking at the videos. Look through some of the homework problems. Look through, kind of skim through the book, that chapter, to kind of see, what are we going to be talking about? Because it kind of gets your, brain ready to learn these things. And sometimes you might find that you have some questions already going into it. You're like, oh, I wonder why that happens, or, what's happening here? And so that can be really helpful. So, and that's probably one thing that I think a lot of students don't do. And it's not something you got to spend a lot of time on. That preview could take 5 minutes, right? Just kind of skim things over, look through the homework problems to see what kind of problems are going to be asked, so you know. Okay, then you gotta go to class, right? And take notes and ask questions. And again, if you're in an online class, your going to class bit is watching the videos the teacher provides, using the book, watch the video, reading the book and stuff and taking notes there. So, it's kind of a different way to attend class, but if you're in an in-person class, come to class. That's where you're going to get the information that you need. Then you need to review. So after you've sat there and you've written out these notes and stuff, take some time as soon as you can to just go through and review over it, because there might be some things that maybe I was talking too quick and you're like, oh, I couldn't get that all down, but you was like, oh, I wanted to remember to put that back in my notes. And so sometimes that'll come back to you and you're like, oh, I think I'm not going to remember to flip that inequality sign or something when I'm dividing by a negative, so I better write that down, or, whatever it might be. But fill in those gaps and try and think of any questions that you might have. Okay, but here's the meat of it, that study part of it. So we're going to talk about this focused study session. All right, so, focused. What do you think of when I say focused?
Paying attention very closely.
Yeah, right? What else?
Not distracted.
Vowels.
Not distracted. What did you say, Annabelle?
Look at the vowels.
Look at the vowels. You're like, I'm so focused. Yeah, so, but this focus study session is basically where I want you to take a topic that maybe you've been struggling with, right? And just go through this focus study session. So like you said, don't not be distracted. So in these focus study sessions, try and make it, I know you guys have so much going on in your life. You might, have kids or job and stuff that you're trying to work with to be able to do this, social media, whatever, try and put those things away and just focus on this. And so make a goal, right? So just, spend a minute to think about, okay, what do I need to study more? Maybe you're like, ooh, I need some help with factoring, so you're going to make a goal that you are going to, understand how to factor trinomials, and that you can factor different, like 5 trinomials or something with no helps, right? So make some kind of a goal there for you. But again, make it focused. Don't just be like, oh, all of chapter 2 or whatever, right? That's too big. You got to have something specific you're focusing on. Okay, then this is the study part. It says 30 to 50 minutes. 50 minutes is pretty long for these focus study sessions. I'd say closer to 30 is better. Because sometimes your brain just quits after a certain amount of time. It's like, no, I'm done. I need a little break. So, and it's going to be kind of intense as you're going through this. So, keep it about 30 minutes or so, and then start using some effective study strategies to really understand the material better. And I'm going to give you a list of some really good study strategies that I want you to try and start implementing. Okay, that's coming up on a slide here really soon. Okay, and then again, in that study session, remember to ask why and what if questions. I know you guys are usually asking the how questions, so, but start trying to ask the why and what ifs. And and sometimes you might not be able to find the answer out, but you can reach out to somebody, you can ask me, or maybe do a little Google search or something like that, to figure some of these things out. Because again, remember, understanding that bigger picture is going to help you really be able to find all of these different parts of your learning. Okay, then the next step. This is so important. And sometimes students don't do this, these last 2 steps actually here. You got to take a little break. You got to take a brain break. But make sure you kind of set a timer, right? 5 to 10 minutes. And think of something maybe that is rewarding to you. Maybe, you're going to go, get yourself, some tea or coffee, or you're going to just go on a little walk, or maybe you just want to play a game on your phone. Usually, trying to stay away from screens can be helpful, but I think, just if that's something that's rewarding for you to just play a little game on your phone, then do it, right? But take a little break. You've got to clear your mind from the math that you were learning. Okay? Then you've got to come back to it. And it's not a long thing, just 5 minutes or so. You're going to look back over what you did, maybe talk about some of those things, a little mini lecture session there, where you're like, okay, this is how I factor trinomials, and just kind of state it out loud. This is what I'm going to do. And that is going to help. So by taking that break and then coming back to it, that helps solidify that in your brain, and that it's getting stored in there. Okay, so don't skip these steps. Take a break, come back, and do this for 5 minutes. Okay, and then start it over again. maybe now you're like, okay, I need, help, with different type of factoring thing. Maybe I'm going to go to sum and difference of cubes. I'm struggling to remember those little formulas for it. So I'm going to, do that as my next goal. But make a specific goal and then do that. Okay. And usually doing just a few of these a day is what is going to help the most. And this is the whole thing about studying, smarter, not harder. Because I don't want you to be spending hours and hours and hours, because usually that is not going to be as productive for you. Okay. All right. Any questions about that study cycle or this focused study session that I can answer for you? Because I really want you guys to try this out. This is one of the things that those students were doing that I showed you at the beginning of this presentation, where they went from really low scores to really high scores. Okay, and the other thing they were doing were the study strategies that I'm going to give you here in a minute. But is there any questions I can answer for you, or any comments you have about it? I have had students say to me in the past, like, it looks like that's going to take so much longer, but I promise you it is not. Okay, doing these little intense focused study sessions is actually, you're going to probably be studying less, but it's going to be retained in your brain because you're using these strategies to help that retrieval of information. Okay, let's see. And I know we're kind of getting to the end here, but these are some of the strategies that I want you to think about. And these strategies are listed in that extra credit thing that you're going to see when you open that up and start, filling it in. It will ask you to pick 2 of these strategies to try out. Right? Don't try and do all of them at once. That's going to be really overwhelming. And if you want to just start with one, start with one. But maybe think about 2 that you're not currently doing, but you think could really help you. Right? So if you have a hard time retrieving the information that is stored in your brain, right? Maybe on exams or something like that, try and solve problems without looking at the examples, right? Try and do them. Do your homework like you're doing an exam, so it can get used to that and it can retrieve that information. Memorize everything you're told to memorize. When I do reviews, I always say, make sure you memorize these things. And then I get to the exam and I'm like, oh, they didn't memorize those formulas. They totally could have done this problem if they would have had those memorized. So make sure you're memorizing what I tell you to memorize. Okay, ask those why and what if questions. Give mini lectures, right? Remember, that whole point of it is talking out loud, right? And so I don't care who you give it to. Nobody needs to respond back to you. But you could, if you want to give it to somebody and get some feedback there, that's fine too. All right, spend time on each of your courses every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, just looking over some things so that stays fresh in your brain. And then use that study cycle with the focused study sessions. Right, try that out. That's one of them. Attend study groups. Try and get study groups together. Even those of you that are in online classes, right? You can reach out to each other and be like, hey, I really like to, study with some people, and you could study by Zoom or something like that if you wanted to, right? Those of you that are in in-person classes, find people that you're sitting around that you're like, yeah, it would be a lot helpful if I can do that. And then always aim for 100% mastery, right? If you're aiming low, you can never get to that 100% mastery. And that's really what you want, especially for your classes that are going to be dealing with, your major and what you're going to be doing for your career. You want to understand that material really well. And so that means you need to study to learn and not just to make the grade, right? Study to learn, not just to make the grade, because when you study to learn, you will make the grade, right? It's crazy how it happens there. Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip over these because we kind of talked about them on the last one. But the last thing that I wanted to talk to you before we go is just mindset. And so there's two types of mindset, and maybe some of you have heard about this. Some people have a fixed mindset and some people have a growth mindset. And it can be in general or it could be about certain things. Like I have a lot of students that are like, say, I'm bad at math. My mom was bad at math, so I'm never going to be good at math, Well, first of all, math does not run in your genes, so I don't want you to get into that, but, I want you to just be able to have a growth mindset and believe that you can do it, right? You can develop this. You put the work in and you're going to get it out. Okay, and follow some of these strategies that I'm giving you, and you will see that happening. Okay, and so looking at this, right, with a fixed mindset, oftentimes people with fixed mindsets, they avoid challenges, right? They don't want to try and, do any harder problems or whatever. They're just like, give me the easy ones. I don't want a challenge, right? They give up easily. They see their effort is fruitless, right? That it's not worth doing. If I give some kind of a feedback on a test, sometimes they take it to heart when really I'm just trying to help, you and give you good feedback to help you in the future. So try not to, take that and think I'm being critical or, negative with that. But mistakes allow learning to happen. I want you to realize that. Okay. And usually they'll feel threatened by the success of others, because they're kind of feeling bad about themselves and not being able to do it. But a growth mindset, they like challenges. They're like, oh, this can be, they think of challenges as kind of a fun thing. Like, ooh, I wonder if I can do this. They're going to persist, not give up. Keep trying these problems and be like, I know I can do this, right? Keep that positive mindset. And then they see how the effort that they put in is leading them to this, being able to master those concepts. And they learn from criticism. So they don't think that it's a negative thing, but they're like, oh, that's a good point. Becky said, I'm making a lot of mistakes with my negatives. And so sometimes they'll say, slow down on the exams because you're making careless mistakes, right? And then find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. So as students, as others in your class or whatever, you see that they're doing well, or, they've struggled to understand a concept and then they finally get it, right? Just being able to talk to them and just, celebrate them can be really helpful. So that's pretty much what I have here for you. And I want you to try and keep a growth mindset about math. I know it can be kind of hard to do, especially if you feel like, gosh, I have tried and tried and tried this, but I am here to help you and I want to see you be successful. And so I will help you in the ways that you need to be able to be successful in this class. So please, please, please reach out to me. Come to my office hours or make an appointment with me. Those of you that are in person classes, utilize the learning assistants that are in the class with you. They're there to help you and they want you to succeed as well. Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. And are there any questions or comments before we go today?
Just thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I know, thank you. So helpful to me. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I really hope you guys will try and start implementing some of these things. I'm going to put it back up here for the last thing. These metacognitive strategies will take you so far if you'll start to implement them. Okay? Have a wonderful night. And if you have questions, please reach out to me. Okay? Good night.
Thank you. Good night.